Hey guys, great to be live with you. When I left Fox and went independent, one of the first stories you guys really wanted me to dig into was actually artificial manipulation of the weather. People told me about HAARP for the first time. I hadn't heard of it. So today I'm actually going to dive into those topics because I actually came across some government documents, official government documents that anyone, including YouTube fact checkers, can look up and verify that the federal government has indeed been manipulating weather for decades to significant extents, to extents that impact humankind. So we're going to look at those federal government documents. What spurred me to cover this today? Well, you guys keep sending me these strange videos. Let me show you a video of some strange clouds. So that's just one set of bizarre clouds. Apparently that was in France. These types of like whole clouds have been spotted a lot recently. Just in the past month or so, there's news articles out in the US seeing those same clouds saying, what are these? Are these UFOs? Well, turns out these are a brand new classification of clouds. They're one of 12 new clouds that meteorologists have officially added to the fold of clouds. When we went to school, there was a small list of clouds that we learned about and saw pictures of what they look like. Well, a bunch more clouds came out of the scene. Why are there a bunch of new clouds? Where'd they come from? That's my question. We're going to get into some of that. Here's another video. One of you guys are sending me these videos. Look at this very strange cloud.
What the hell are these clouds? Holy smokes, what is that? Oh, they're chemtrailing, but I have never... Wow, it's like a painting. But look at that, you guys. Is it like a spaceship? What is happening? I'm a little creeped out, I'm not gonna lie. Isn't that crazy, you guys?
Those were pretty. They were really weird clouds. I'm checking your comments. Thanks for chiming in live. Die said, what does government mean? Which government? Well, in this case, we're talking the federal government. We're going to look at a .gov website here in the US. Our US feds have been manipulating weather for decades, as you'll see in the documentation I'm about to show you. From NOAA, actually. That's the federal agency we're going to look at. Before we dive all the way into it, shout out to the sponsor of my coverage. The second largest and third largest bank runs in history happened last month. The government is taking steps to guarantee all deposits. That means more money printing. Thousands have approached Noble Gold Investments to secure their wealth with gold. Gold is the most stable asset outside of government control. Hurry, go to noblegoldinvestments.com to secure your wealth. Bag a free 5-ounce America the Beautiful coin if you qualify. Noble Gold Investments, that is ivoryheckergold.com, link down in my description, ivoryheckergold.com. Okay, this sounds like a big conspiracy theory story, but there's actual federal documentation of how they manipulate the weather. So I don't know why it's been portrayed as a conspiracy theory when there's this federal documentation I'm about to show you. And my question, why is there all this freak out about climate change and global warming when decades ago the government was already doing such a good job of changing weather as documented by NOAA in its federal documentations that I'm about to show you? Because if they were that good at manipulating weather back in the 70s, then we can only imagine how good they are at manipulating it now, and we wouldn't have to worry about climate change. Okay, so before YouTube freaks out at me and deletes my video, let me show the YouTube gods their favorite website, CNN.com. Even CNN is agreeing that humans are able to manipulate acts of God. CNN reports scientists in the US are flying planes into clouds to make it snow more. With 61% of the contiguous US in drought, wouldn't it be nice if we could just make it rain or just make more snow? Well, certain parts of the country are doing just that, sort of. It's called cloud seeding, and it's nothing new. It's been around since the 1940s, and countries all over the world have been doing it for various reasons, most notably China. But it's a growing practice in the US, especially in the drought stricken West. It's also surrounded with controversy. Okay, so there you go. Did you know that an airplane can make it rain if it flies through a cloud? That's part of human manipulation of weather. Now, let me show you that government document I was referring to. Let's just jump all the way into this, shall we? And then I'll show you these 12 new clouds. But here it is. This is the NOAA report. This is on NOAA.gov, NOAA.gov. A report to the President and Congress, National Weather Modification Policies and Programs, published November 1979. Did you know that there's a 147-page report on national weather modification policies and programs that the president and all of Congress knew about? And here today, this many decades later, we're brainwashed into thinking it's a conspiracy theory. But no, they go into great detail about all the different forms of weather that they manipulate. Now, and a lot of this is experimentation. They're talking about how they've been experimenting, trying to do a better job of manipulating acts of God. Now, I want to scroll to page 12 where they actually talk about they talk about one of the very strange clouds that humans in the world have been seeing. This part I highlighted. Let me actually show you a very strange cloud that appeared over Syria 2 weeks before the devastating earthquake there earlier this year. Washington Post did a story on this bizarre cloud. Quote, how a saucer-like cloud hovered over Turkey on Thursday. Look at this cloud. So bizarre. A lot of people say, hey, that's man-made. They said an extraordinary cloud formation hangs in the sky over Bursa, Turkey. And here's another image of it. Very strange. So this particular cloud, they explain in the article that it's a lenticular cloud, not uncommon in the vicinity of tall mountains. So these clouds are actually formed by mountains, according to the Washington Post. Well, this particular cloud is something that the 1979 report on human manipulation of weather, they focus in on that same cloud. Isn't that interesting? And here it is, clouds over mountainous regions. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. They said the 1957 final report of President Eisenhower's advisory committee. Let me zoom in so you guys can read along. On weather control, discussed several winter orographic seeding projects. Since no research project results were available, the ACWC, that's the Advisory Committee on Weather Control, studied data from operational seeding projects. They compared target area precipitation during seeded storms with that which occurred in nearby, presumably unaffected control areas. The target control precipitation ratio for seeded storms were compared with historical ratios obtained from data collected before the cloud seeding began. To determine the effects of seeding, the precipitation ratios for seeded storms were about 10 to 15% higher than the historical averages. These data indicated that precipitation increases had been realized as a result of seeding. Nevertheless, the weather control group judged that more conclusive evidence based on carefully designed randomized field trials should be sought. That was 1957. They were actually handpicking these clouds, the bizarre clouds that form over mountains, and seeding those clouds and having success in creating more rain. Actually, let me show you guys an article in the Smithsonian Magazine before we look more at that government document. But Smithsonian Magazine talks about it too. It was the 1950s, you guys. Well, like CNN report, 1940s is kind of the first documentation of human control of weather, and it's not just seeding, it's not just creating more rain. They're doing all kinds of forms of weather manipulation. We'll get into more, but Smithsonian highlights this weather control as a Cold War weapon. In the 1950s, some U.S. scientists warned that without immediate action, the Soviet Union would control the Earth's thermometers. On November 13th, you see this graphic here. This is a 1954 Collier's magazine cover. It says, "Weather made to order. Ike's advisor reports man's progress in weather control." Man was progressing greatly in weather control in the 1950s. Suddenly we go into radio silence about it, and we're gaslit out the wazoo that humans can't control acts of God now. Which I was wondering how much humans could myself, because the mainstream media tells you it's a big conspiracy theory, and the fact checkers are swarming in regards to HAARP and weather control tactics. But now that I've dug into, I've looked at the actual government documents, I've looked at old magazine articles like this one. It's very clear that weather control has been happening at the hands of federal government agencies and individuals. Let's look at this more from this Smithsonian Magazine article. It says on November 13th, 1946, pilot Curtis Talbot, working for the General Electric Research Laboratory, climbed to an altitude of 14,000 feet, about 30 miles east of Schenectady, New York. So he's in upstate New York in an airplane, 14,000 feet above land. Talbot, along with scientist Dr. Vincent Schaefer, released 3 pounds of dry ice, frozen carbon dioxide, into the clouds. As they turned south, Dr. Schaefer noted, quote, "I looked towards the rear and was thrilled to see long streams of snow falling from the base of the cloud through which we had just passed. I shouted to Curtis to swing around, and as we did so, we passed through a mass of glistening snow crystals. Needless to say, we were excited." Smithsonian reports, quote, "They had recreated the world's first human-made snowstorm." That's right, snowstorms are made by man, you guys, and have been made by man since the 1950s. Of course, God makes most of the snowstorms, but for the people wondering how many snowstorms are made by man, that's a good question. We have to ask now because we have evidence like this. Let me go back to that federal government document from 1979 in which government scientists were reporting to the president and to Congress their progress in manipulating the climate and manipulating acts of God. One of the acts of God that federal scientists were working on manipulating was, wait for it, hurricanes. Can you believe it? They would also control the fall of hail. They talk about that in this document, but look at what they say about controlling hurricanes. Hurricane moderation, it says on page 20 of the report. Quote, "Very little experimentation has been done on modification of severe storms. The single exception is the hurricane. One hurricane modification concept has undergone some experimentation by NOAA and the Department of Defense scientists." Of course, it's the Department of Defense. So the concept involves strategic, hold up, guys. Why would the Department of Defense work on modifying hurricanes? Let's think about that. Department of Defense is there to defend us against foreign nations, allegedly. So that leads me to believe that Department of Defense sees weather events like hurricanes as possible threats from foreign nations, and vice versa. Who knows how much weather events are being harnessed by humans against each other. It's interesting that the Department of Defense is in on this. Anyway, it says the concept involves strategic silver iodide seeding of the eye wall and inner rain band clouds of a mature hurricane in an attempt to displace outward the ring of ascending air in the eye wall and thereby reduce the maximum wind speed. The idea is to slow down the hurricane's rotation in the same manner as a spinning ice skater who extends his arms. 3 mature Atlantic hurricanes have been seeded by Project Storm Fury scientists. Were you guys aware of Project Storm Fury? Apparently a project in the 1960s. 3 mature Atlantic hurricanes have been seeded by Project Storm Fury scientists, but only one experiment on Hurricane Debby in 1969 tested the displacement moderation concept. Hurricane Debby was seeded 5 times at 2-hourly intervals on August 18th and again August 20th. On the first seeded day, the maximum wind dropped 30% 4 to 6 hours after the last seeding. It re-intensified on August 19th, but again dropped by 15% 2 to 6 hours after the last seeding on August 20th. That's significant. The fact that human manipulation of a hurricane dropped the wind speed by 30%. Then it re-intensified. They seeded it again. It dropped by 15%. So they were seriously reducing the power of this hurricane. And that was back in 1969. So by looking at this government document, it appears that humans actually have great control of hurricanes. I mean, imagine if that's how good they were at it back then. Just imagine how good they are at manipulating hurricanes today. But they've gone into radio silence. The government loves to operate in secrecy. By the way, you guys, I have linked for your enjoyment this exact document down in my description. Now, let me show you guys the website I got this document from. It was NOAA.gov, but this webpage from NOAA.gov is very interesting because NOAA, I didn't realize that, not only is the government working on manipulating weather, but average citizens are as well. And according to federal law, you have to alert NOAA every time that you are going to go mess with acts of God. So if an average citizen wants to make it rain artificially, they can do so, but they just have to tell NOAA about it. So here, what we have, this page is called Weather Modification Project Reports, Publication History and Scope. In the late 1940s and 1950s, many deemed the deliberate or the inadvertent alteration of atmospheric conditions by human activity, also known as weather modification, as a promising science of the future. Currently, the most common form of weather modification is cloud seeding, which increases rain or snow, usually for the purpose of increasing the local water supply. Weather modification can also have the goal of preventing damaging weather, such as hail or hurricanes, from occurring. So this list below is all of the human weather modification projects, and a lot of them are rain enhancement. But I went to the last page to look at the most recent weather modification project that an average American is working on. And it's just kind of like scary that there's just like random citizens out there like creating acts of God. But NOAA said you can do that. You just have to tell NOAA. So let me show you guys the most recent weather modification project. Of course, it's for the cooling of the earth, because a lot of people right now feel that the Earth is heating up uncontrollably. So the most recent guy doing a science experiment with acts of God is trying to cool down the Earth to reverse global warming. You can see he filled out the the NOAA form to comply with federal guidelines. His name is Luke Eisman. Project is called Cooling Earth. Purpose of the project: reduce average global temperature. He describes what he's doing. He says, we are deploying, let me zoom in so you guys can read along. Right here, we are deploying sulfur dioxide, calcium carbonate, and other proprietary compounds into the stratosphere to offset global warming. Our deployments will occur via balloons and or other aircraft. Deployment rates will vary, peaking at no more than 100 megatons in total per year. Initial flights will occur with as little as 1 milligram. Does that say 1 milligram per flight? So he is spraying sulfur dioxide and calcium carbonate or other quote unquote proprietary compounds. God knows what this man, Luke Eisman, is pouring into our atmosphere, but he plans to pour 100 megatons of it in total into the American atmosphere, beginning in the state of South Dakota, in order to prevent global warming. Can you guys believe this? I hope whatever proprietary compounds this guy has are safe for our health. So human manipulation of the weather and acts of God are a real thing. Now, I just think it's really interesting that there are all these new clouds, and people tell me various things about the strange clouds in the sky. Some of them appear to be man-made. Well, some of them actually are man-made according to official sources. Now, there's actually a scientific term for the man-made clouds. They are called homo mutatus. That means they are caused by man. A lot of them are, they start out as contrails from an airplane, or as a lot of my friends in the audience like to call it, chemtrails. But contrails, the weather experts say, contrails coming out of the airplane, they kind of get blown by the wind and spread and grow and turn into a cloud that is man-made because it came from an airplane. So some of these clouds are man-made, but I want to show you this media clip. One of my viewers sent me this as well. When the media first started reporting on these 12 new clouds that were just somehow discovered. Here it is.
Really means man-made.
The World Meteorological Organization has decided to add 11 new cloud classifications. That's to their international cloud atlas, and this is a big deal because it is the first time they've added anything in 30 years.
Forget being on cloud 9, we are on cloud 12 because that's how many new types of clouds have been added to this historic update coming from meteorologists. I'm a little biased, right? Exciting stuff, guys. All right, so the new types include the Volatus or roll cloud, which has been designated as a whole new species. You can see it gets its name from this long horizontal tube-like shape. Next one up, we have the Cabum, or the hole punch cloud. This big circular gap is sometimes caused by aircraft taking off and landing. Very easy to see, right? Makes sense there. And we also have the Spiritus. These are gorgeous. It's actually my favorite. It's kind of looking like it waves while you're underwater. I mean, these are actually beautiful. I mean, check these out. And then finally, we also have the big surfer waves of the Fluxus cloud. So beautiful, right? There's just a sample of the new additions that we have. Meteorologists, sky watchers, daydreamers, we're all geeking out, guys.
Okay, so many mainstream media outlets reported on that. Most recently there you saw the Today Show, which is really interesting. When I went to get the original copy from the Today Show's website, they said that video had expired. Like, since when does a news report video expire? But you can no longer access that video on Today Show's website for some reason, where they cheered on these 12 new clouds randomly discovered in 2017. 12 clouds added to the World Meteorological Organization's International Cloud Atlas. First time they've added clouds in 30 years. And I'll show you this web page from Travel Channel does a good job of documenting them. You can see each cloud, each of the 12 here. That is a really cool looking, really bizarre looking cloud right there. How does it say? Either sometimes descending. Yeah, it doesn't say how the cloud formed, or like this is my issue with all the mainstream media covers it, but they never said why all of a sudden all these new clouds are formed. What's causing a bunch of new kinds of clouds? This one is so bizarre, looking like cartoon ocean waves. And then there's the Cavum cloud, which is the first cloud I showed you guys in my live stream today. People have been sending me videos of this cloud formation. People are seeing it all over the place. Local news in America has been reporting it, sightings of this cloud over the past few months. Like she said, it's a hole punch cloud. Basically, it's formed when an airplane flies through a thin layer of cloud. The presence of the airplane causes the cloud around it to crystallize into ice and fall to the ground, leaving a gaping hole. But airplanes have been around for many decades, so why has this cloud just been added, just been spotted so much? But there it is. And then we've got these clouds, yada, yada, all kinds of different clouds, very, very unique. That one looks like it's coming, that cloud's being formed by a factory. Looks like it's coming out of the smokestacks. And then we've got number 10, number 11, and number 12. Okay. So some of the clouds, they do explain how they're formed, like the one that's formed by airplanes, but the rest of them, they're like, yeah, just magically there's more clouds. So is it created by man? Now, people keep telling me about HAARP. They think that HAARP has created these clouds. So I'm going to get into HAARP a little bit. Let's show you what HAARP looks like. HAARP. Here it is. NBC News covering it. Conspiracy theories abound as U.S. military closes HAARP. This is an article from 2014. So HAARP was formed by the U.S. military, and they shut it down in 2014. Conspiracy theories were already abounding at that time. People were catching on to what HAARP was doing. So my theory, if we're jumping into theories here, is I think the U.S. military shut it, quote unquote, shut it down because people were on to them too much. This is a giant complex in Alaska where radiation is sent up into the highest reaches of the Earth's atmosphere to manipulate the atmosphere up there. And people are theorizing that the atmosphere manipulation they're doing is actually causing weather events. So HAARP did not shut down. When the U.S. military got rid of it, actually, University of Alaska took it over, as I recall. So HAARP is still alive and well, being operated by University of Alaska. So did our federal government, did our military, our U.S. Air Force is the one who operated this, did they just throw in the towel on weather, on upper atmosphere manipulation, say, we're just no longer interested, nothing to see here, we didn't get anything out of HAARP? Of course not. They shut it down and passed it off to a university because people were on to them. Government likes to operate in secrecy, especially when it's these big projects that might involve other nations. When you're talking about manipulating the upper atmosphere, that's going to affect people around the world probably. So they want to operate in secrecy in regards to things like that. So they shut down HAARP, but they're doing their own thing. I would bet all my money on it. Okay. The U.S. Air Force is still working on that upper atmosphere, but all the conspiracy theories, their eyes are still on HAARP, whereas HAARP is just hasn't been operated by the feds since 2014, and NBC News covered it when the Air Force said we're done with HAARP. Here it is. They said, this is what it looks. This is literally what it looks like. It says the 180 antennae HAARP array is spread across a 40-acre site in Gacona, Alaska. It says here the U.S. Air Force has notified Congress that it intends to shut down HAARP, a controversial Alaska-based research facility that studies an energetic and active region of the upper atmosphere. Conspiracy theorists are abuzz about the news, given that HAARP, short for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, has long been the center of wild speculation on the program that the program is designed to control the weather, or worse. In 2010, Venezuela leader Hugo Chavez claimed that HAARP or a program like it triggered the Haiti earthquake. For the record, the Haiti quake of 2010 was caused by slippage of a previous unmapped fault along the border of the Caribbean and North American tectonic plates, says NBC News without any source cited. Or as they like to say about Trump, without evidence. NBC said that it was due to an undiscovered fault line. NBC goes on to say, HAARP is a research program designed to analyze the ionosphere, a proportion of the upper atmosphere that stretches from about 53 miles above the surface of Earth to 370 miles up. The program, that's right edging out next to outer space, you guys. The program has been funded by the Air Force, the Navy, the University of Alaska, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. You guys, DARPA, I believe that's the same. DARPA is the same agency that was dealing with the what's it freaking bioweapons that have been biolabs, the biolabs in Ukraine. There's actually about 30 different biolabs that DARPA deals with around that are owned by DARPA that are in nations around the world, according to DARPA's own website, as I recall reading on their website. Now, why the U.S. federal government has biolabs or, in foreign nations around the world is beyond me. But they're the same agency that's also messing with our upper atmosphere. NBC explains why HAARP exists. They said the U.S. military is interested in the ionosphere because this portion of the atmosphere plays a role in transmitting radio signals. HAARP sends radio beams into the ionosphere to study the response from it, one of the few ways to accurately measure this inaccessible part of the atmosphere. HAARP operates out of the HAARP Research Station in Gacona, Alaska, where it has a high-powered radio frequency transmitter that can perturb a small portion of the ionosphere. Other instruments are then used to measure the perturbation. So they shoot these radio frequencies right up to the outer edges of our atmosphere, and they disrupt the atmosphere up there. And NBC actually linked to this article where HAARP had indeed impacted the upper atmosphere to such an extent that they created man-made northern lights, you guys. LiveScience.com reporting that. Back in 2005, NBC linked to this. They said it's the article that says first artificial neon sky show created. By shooting intense radio beams into the night sky, researchers created a modest neon light show visible from the ground. The process is not well understood, but scientists speculate it could one day be employed to light a city or generate celestial advertisements. Researchers with the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, aka HAARP, Aurora, or like as in Aurora Borealis. That's what HAARP stands for. The project in Alaska tickled the upper atmosphere to the extent that it glowed with green speckles. So that was in 2005 that they reported that. So Americans paid attention. Conspiracy theories began to form. And about 10 years later, our military Air Force officials said, okay, we're getting rid of HAARP. Too much attention. But believe me, they're still doing their thing. It's just called something else. It's another project somewhere else. It's no longer in Alaska, or maybe it is because Alaska is gigantic. but HAARP is just a little university project now. The Air Force, who knows where they're located with their activities. I just wanted to highlight some of the stuff since you guys were asking about it, and I did come across some really bizarre, interesting things that are happening. I just, you guys, let me show you how common it is. These brand new man-made clouds. Local news across the nation's been covering this stuff because look at these pictures. People keep taking pics of these hole punch clouds. They're everywhere now. KXAN, local NBC News in Austin, covered it after viewers submitted pictures. They photographed these man-made clouds in Texas and said, "What the heck is that?" Well, yeah, that's one of the 12 brand new clouds that magically began to form. We don't know why. So interesting stuff. Turns out that human manipulation of acts of God is indeed happening. I was stunned to find out that in 1969, people were successfully slowing down and dismantling hurricanes in 1969. And then we didn't hear anything after that. So what the heck are they doing? Why didn't they stop these other hurricanes if they were so good at it back then? Did they want these most recent hurricanes to happen? I have a lot of questions after reading that federal document, which you can find linked down in my description, straight off of NOAA.gov, you guys. I love how it's like an official photocopied 100+ page document. The pages are literally stained in yellow. It's like so authentic. But anyways, go look at it for yourself. No conspiracy theories here. Those are the feds in their own words. You guys have a good one. We're going to have an awesome truth bombs on Friday. We've got my Russian colluder. I'm best friends with a Russian. We joke that we're colluding and hacking all the time, but we're not. It's just a joke. But anyway, she's going to join me to break down the Russian perspective on humanity on Friday. Shout out to my bestie, Elena. You don't want to miss it. All right, we'll see you guys later.